The phone wouldn't stop ringing. I was elbow deep in dishwater watching soap bubbles pop against the kitchen window while Tommy played with his toy trucks on the living room floor. Ryan had left his phone on the counter again before heading to the garage to fix our neighbor's fence. The ringtone kept going and going, that annoying default sound he never bothered to change. "Daddy's phone!" Tommy called out, looking up from his red fire truck. "I know, baby. Mommy's got it." I dried my hands on the dish towel and grabbed the phone. The screen showed unknown number, but that wasn't unusual. Ryan's construction crew got calls from new clients all the time, especially on weekends when people finally had time to think about home repairs. I swiped to answer. "Hello, Ryan's phone?" Silence. Then, barely above a whisper, a woman's voice drifted through the speaker. "You left your socks here again." My heart stopped. The words were soft, intimate, like she was lying in bed talking to someone she loved. I stood frozen in my kitchen, the phone pressed against my ear, waiting for her to realize she'd made a mistake and hang up. But she didn't hang up. Instead, she giggled. It was a light, happy sound that made my stomach drop to the floor. "I love you so much." The words hit me like a punch. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My finger found the end call button and pressed it so hard I thought I might crack the screen. The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of Tommy's trucks rolling across the hardwood floor. I stared at the phone in my hand like it was a snake that might bite me. My legs felt weak, so I grabbed the edge of the counter to steady myself. Socks. She said socks. That meant Ryan had been somewhere, taken off his socks, and left them behind. The kind of place where you take off your socks. The kind of place where someone else does your laundry and knows which socks belong to you. My mind started racing, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. Ryan worked construction. He came home dirty every day, boots caked with mud, clothes covered in sawdust. He always changed in the garage before coming inside so he wouldn't track dirt through the house. But his socks? His socks came off in our bedroom, went into our laundry basket, got washed in our washing machine. So whose washing machine had Ryan's socks been in? I looked out the kitchen window toward the garage where I could see Ryan's shadow moving around. He was probably organizing his tools, completely unaware that his wife had just answered a phone call that shattered everything she thought she knew about their marriage. 8 years. We'd been married for 8 years. Together for 10. Tommy was 6 years old, which meant this woman, whoever she was, had been in Ryan's life for most of our son's childhood. Maybe longer. The voice played over and over in my head. "You left your socks here again." Like it had happened before. Like it was normal. Like Ryan regularly left his socks at this woman's house. And that giggle. That soft, loving giggle before she said she loved him. My hands started shaking. I set the phone down on the counter and gripped the edge with both hands, trying to stop the trembling that was spreading through my whole body. I felt sick. Actually sick, like I might throw up right there in my clean kitchen, with my son playing happily just a few feet away. "Mommy?" Tommy's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you okay?" I turned to look at him, this beautiful little boy with Ryan's dark hair and my green eyes, and tried to smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Keep playing." But I wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. The woman's voice kept echoing in my head, and I realized something that made my blood run cold. The voice wasn't completely unfamiliar. I'd heard it before, somewhere, somehow. It was buried in my memory like a song you can't quite place, but I knew I'd heard that voice before. Which meant this wasn't some random stranger Ryan was having an affair with. This was someone I knew. I spent the next hour pacing around the house like a caged animal. Every time I heard a sound from the garage, my heart would jump into my throat. Tommy kept asking why I looked sad, and I kept lying to my 6-year-old son, telling him Mommy was just tired. When Ryan finally walked through the back door, wiping his hands on an old rag, I was sitting at the kitchen table pretending to read a magazine. My hands were still shaking, so I kept them hidden in my lap. "Hey, babe." He kissed the top of my head like he did every day. Like nothing had changed. Like some woman hadn't just whispered sweet words into his phone an hour ago. Sorry I took so long. Mr. Peterson's fence was worse than I thought. I watched him wash his hands at the sink, the same routine he'd done thousands of times before. But now everything felt different. Was he washing off dirt from work, or was he washing off traces of her? "Your phone rang," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Ryan glanced over his shoulder. Oh yeah? Who was it? I answered it. He turned around, drying his hands on the dish towel. Something flickered across his face, but it happened so fast I almost missed it. Fear, maybe, or panic. What did they want? His voice sounded normal, but his eyes weren't meeting mine. It was a woman. I stood up from the table, the magazine falling to the floor. She said you left your socks at her place. The color drained from Ryan's face. Not the red flush of embarrassment you'd expect from someone caught cheating. This was different. This was the pale, sick look of someone who'd just seen a ghost. Lily, I can explain. She said she loved you, Ryan. My voice cracked on his name. She giggled and said she loved you. Ryan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen him do a million times when he was stressed about work or bills, but this was different stress. This was the kind of stress that made people look like they might collapse. It's not what you think, he said quietly. Then what is it? I stepped closer to him, searching his face for answers. Because what I think is that my husband is having an affair with someone who does his laundry and tells him she loves him. No. Ryan shook his head hard. No, Lily, it's not like that. It's complicated. Complicated? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. What's complicated about it? You're either cheating on me or you're not. Ryan looked toward the living room where Tommy was still playing, then back at me. Can we talk about this later, when Tommy's asleep? No. The word came out sharper than I intended. We're talking about this now. I've been going crazy for the past hour trying to figure out who this woman is and why she has your socks. Lily, please. Who is she, Ryan? He opened his mouth, then closed it. His hands were shaking now too, and he kept glancing toward the door like he wanted to run. I can't tell you right now. You can't tell me? My voice was getting louder and I saw Tommy look up from his trucks. I forced myself to lower it. Your wife can't know who you're sleeping with? I'm not sleeping with anyone. Ryan's voice was desperate now. God, Lily, I would never cheat on you. Never. You have to believe me. Then explain the phone call. I can't. Why not? Because he looked lost, like a little boy who'd broken something and didn't know how to fix it. Because you wouldn't understand. That hurt worse than anything else he could have said. Try me. Ryan stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him fighting some internal battle. Finally, he pulled his phone out of his pocket and started scrolling through it. What are you doing? I need to make a call. His voice was barely above a whisper. I need to fix this. He walked toward the back door, phone already pressed to his ear. Ryan, don't you dare walk away from me. But he was already outside, and through the window I could see him pacing back and forth in our backyard, talking urgently to whoever had answered. The same person who'd answered when I called, probably. The woman with the familiar voice who loved my husband. That night, Ryan slept on the couch. He said he needed space to think, but I knew he was avoiding me. I lay in our empty bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation we'd had over the past few months, looking for clues I'd missed. The next morning, Ryan left for work before Tommy and I woke up. He'd made coffee and left a note on the kitchen counter. We'll talk tonight. I promise. I love you. But I couldn't wait until tonight. The not knowing was eating me alive. After dropping Tommy off at school, I came home and did something I'd never done in 8 years of marriage. I went through Ryan's things. I started with his dresser drawers, looking for anything that seemed out of place. Love letters, receipts, phone numbers written on scraps of paper. But everything looked normal. Work clothes, old t-shirts, the watch I'd given him for our anniversary. Then I moved to his desk in the corner of our bedroom. Ryan wasn't the most organized person, but he kept important papers in the bottom drawer. Insurance documents, Tommy's birth certificate, our marriage license. That's where I found the bank statements. At first, everything looked normal. Ryan's paychecks going in, our mortgage payment going out, grocery store purchases, gas stations. But then, I noticed something strange. Every month, for the past 3 years, there was a payment for exactly $450 to something called Willowbrook Care Center. $450. Every single month. For 3 years. I'd never heard of Willowbrook Care Center. I'd certainly never agreed to pay them almost $500 a month. That was more than our car payment. My hands were shaking as I pulled out more statements, going back further. The payment started in January 2022, just a few months after Tommy started kindergarten. Before that, there were smaller payments to the same place, $200 a month, then $300. Then it jumped to $450 and stayed there. I grabbed my laptop and searched for Willowbrook Care Center. The website loaded slowly, and when it did, my heart sank even further. It was a residential care facility, the kind of place where people lived when they couldn't take care of themselves. The homepage showed pictures of peaceful gardens and smiling staff members helping elderly patients. But as I read more, I realized it wasn't just for elderly people. Willowbrook specialized in long-term care for people with mental health issues, developmental disabilities, and chronic illnesses, people who needed round-the-clock supervision and medical care. Ryan had been paying for someone's care at this facility for years, someone I didn't know existed. I clicked through the website, looking for more information. There was a section about visiting hours, family support groups, and payment plans. Everything was designed to help families navigate the difficult process of having a loved one in long-term care. A loved one. Someone Ryan loved enough to spend thousands of dollars caring for them. Someone he'd hidden from me for our entire marriage. I printed out the bank statements and the information about Willowbrook, then sat at the kitchen table staring at the evidence spread out in front of me. The woman on the phone, the mysterious payments, Ryan's strange reaction when I confronted him. This wasn't a simple affair. This was something much more complicated. I thought about calling Ryan at work, demanding answers right then and there. But something held me back. Maybe it was the look of panic in his eyes yesterday, or the way he'd said I wouldn't understand. Maybe it was the fact that he'd been making these payments for years without ever missing one, even when money was tight. Whatever was happening at Willowbrook Care Center, it was important enough for Ryan to sacrifice our family's financial security, important enough to lie to his wife about for years. I looked at the address on the website. Willowbrook was only 20 minutes away on the other side of town. I could drive there right now, walk through the front door, and demand to know why my husband had been paying them thousands of dollars. But did I really want to know what I'd find there? I folded the bank statements and put them in my purse. Tommy wouldn't be out of school for 6 hours. That was plenty of time to drive to Willowbrook and get some answers. The drive to Willowbrook felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. I kept changing my mind about what I was doing, pulling over twice to turn around before forcing myself to keep going. By the time I reached the facility, my palms were so sweaty I could barely grip the steering wheel. Willowbrook Care Center looked nothing like the cheerful website photos. The building was older than I'd expected, a sprawling, single-story structure surrounded by tall pine trees that blocked out most of the sunlight. The parking lot was half empty, and the few cars there looked like they belonged to staff rather than visitors. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, watching people come and go through the main entrance. A woman in scrubs wheeled an elderly man out to a van. A younger man carried flowers through the front door, his shoulders slumped like he was carrying the weight of the world. Finally, I forced myself to get out of the car and walk toward the entrance. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and I stepped into a lobby that smelled like disinfectant and artificial flowers. "Can I help you?" The receptionist was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her name tag read, Patricia. "I'm here to visit someone," I said, my voice sounding strange and far away. "But I'm not sure. I need to find out if someone is a patient here." Patricia's expression grew cautious. "Are you family?" I hesitated. Technically, I didn't even know who I was looking for. "My husband has been making payments here. I found the bank statements, but he never told me about it. I just need to understand what's going on." "I'm sorry, but I can't give out patient information unless you're listed as an authorized contact." Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. "What's your husband's name? Maybe I can check if he's on file." "Ryan Mitchell." Patricia typed something into her computer, and I watched her face change. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by something that looked like sympathy. "Oh," she said softly. "You're Ryan's wife." The way she said it made my stomach drop, like she knew who I was, or at least knew that I existed. Like my husband had talked about me to these people I'd never met. "You know Ryan?" "He's been coming here for years." Such a devoted brother. Patricia caught herself and looked uncomfortable. I probably shouldn't have said that. Brother. The word hit me like a physical blow. Ryan had a brother? Or a sister? Someone he'd been visiting for years without ever mentioning them to me. I don't understand, I said, gripping the edge of the reception desk. Ryan doesn't have any siblings. His parents died when he was young. He told me he was an only child. Patricia looked genuinely confused now. But he comes every month to visit Sophia. He handles all her care arrangements, pays for everything. We all assumed you knew. Sophia. The name meant nothing to me, but hearing it spoken out loud made everything feel more real. This wasn't some abstract mystery anymore. There was an actual person named Sophia who my husband visited every month, someone he cared for and paid for and had never once mentioned to his wife. Can I see her? The words came out before I could stop them. Can I visit Sophia? Patricia shook her head. I'm sorry, but you're not on her approved visitor list. Only Ryan is authorized to visit, and he specifically requested that no one else be allowed access without his written permission. He what? My voice was getting louder, and I saw other people in the lobby turn to look at us. He specifically said I couldn't visit? Not you specifically, Patricia said quickly. He just said family only, and he's listed as her only family contact. I felt like I was drowning. Ryan had not only hidden this person from me, he'd actively prevented me from finding out about her. He'd made sure that even if I somehow discovered Willowbrook, I wouldn't be able to learn anything about Sophia. What's wrong with her? I asked desperately. Why is she here? Patricia glanced around the lobby, then leaned closer to me. I really shouldn't be telling you this, but she has severe mental health issues. She's been here since she was in her early 20s. Ryan's been her guardian since before you two got married. Guardian. The word made everything click into place. The monthly payments, the secrecy, the panic in Ryan's eyes when I confronted him about the phone call. Sophia wasn't just someone Ryan visited, she was someone he was responsible for. Someone who depended on him completely. Someone who thought she was in love with him. I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not when I was this close to understanding what had been hidden from me for years. When are visiting hours? I asked Patricia. She glanced at the clock on the wall. They start in about an hour, but like I said, you're not on the approved list. What if I said I was Ryan's wife and he sent me to check on Sophia? What if I said it was an emergency? Patricia looked uncomfortable. I could get in trouble for that. Please. I leaned across the desk, lowering my voice. I just found out my husband has been hiding someone from me for our entire marriage. I need to understand what's happening. I promise I won't cause any problems. Something in my voice must have convinced her, because Patricia sighed and looked around the lobby again. Room 127. Down the hall, turn left at the nurse's station. But if anyone asks, you didn't hear it from me. I thanked her and found a chair in the lobby to wait. The hour crawled by like a week. I watched families come and go, some looking hopeful, others looking heartbroken. I wondered which category I'd fall into when I finally met Sophia. When visiting hours started, I followed Patricia's directions down a long hallway lined with patient rooms. Some doors were open, and I could see people inside watching television or talking with visitors. Others were closed, with only nameplates to indicate who lived behind them. Room 127 had Sophia Mitchell written on a small white card next to the door. Mitchell. She had Ryan's last name. I knocked softly and heard a voice call out, "Come in." The room was small but comfortable, with a single bed, a dresser, and 2 chairs by the window. Sitting in one of the chairs was a woman who looked to be in her late 20s, with long, dark hair and the same brown eyes as my husband. She looked up when I entered, and her face lit up with a smile that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. "Ryan," she said, starting to stand up. "You're early today, and you look different. Did you cut your hair?" My heart clenched. She thought I was Ryan. Or maybe she was just confused about who I was. "I'm not Ryan," I said gently, staying near the door. "I'm Lily. I'm Ryan's wife." Sophia's expression changed, cycling through confusion, recognition, and something that looked like fear. She sat back down heavily in her chair. "Wife," she repeated slowly. "Ryan has a wife." "Yes, we've been married for 8 years. We have a son named Tommy." Sophia stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her processing this information. Her hands were trembling slightly, and she kept glancing toward the door like she expected Ryan to walk in at any moment. "He never told me he got married," she said finally. "He used to talk about you when we were younger, Lily this, Lily that, but then he stopped mentioning you, and I thought maybe you'd broken up." "When you were younger?" I moved closer, taking the other chair by the window. "Sophia, how do you know Ryan?" She looked at me like I'd asked the most obvious question in the world. "He's my brother, my big brother. He's taken care of me since I was 22. Brother. There it was, the truth I'd been circling around all day. Ryan had a sister with mental health issues who'd been living in this facility for years, while I had no idea she existed. "Ryan never told me about you," I said softly. Sophia's face crumpled. "He's ashamed of me. I know he is. I'm broken, and he doesn't want people to know about his broken sister." "I don't think that's true." "It is." Tears started rolling down her cheeks. "I ruined everything for him. Our parents sent me away because I was too much trouble, and Ryan had to choose between them and me. He chose me, and they disowned both of us." The pieces were starting to come together. Ryan's parents hadn't died young like he'd told me. They'd abandoned their children when Sophia became too difficult to handle. "What happened when you were 22? I asked. Sophia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I had what the doctors call a psychotic break. I started hearing voices, seeing things that weren't there. I thought people were trying to hurt me. I couldn't work anymore, couldn't take care of myself." She looked out the window at the pine trees swaying in the breeze. "Sometimes I still get confused about things, like today when I called Ryan and told him I loved him. I know he's my brother, but sometimes my brain forgets and thinks he's my boyfriend. The doctors say it's part of my illness." The phone call. Finally, it all made sense. I drove home in a daze, my mind reeling from everything Sophia had told me. By the time I picked up Tommy from school, I felt like I was moving through water, going through the motions of normal life while my world had completely shifted. Ryan's truck was in the driveway when we got home. He was sitting at the kitchen table, still in his work clothes, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Daddy!" Tommy ran to him, and Ryan scooped him up in a hug that lasted longer than usual. "Hey, buddy. How was school?" "Good. We learned about dinosaurs. Did you know some dinosaurs were as big as school buses?" "That's amazing." Ryan's voice was strained, and his eyes kept darting to me over Tommy's head. "Why don't you go play in your room for a bit? Mommy and Daddy need to talk." After Tommy disappeared upstairs, Ryan and I stared at each other across the kitchen. He looked exhausted and defeated, like a man who'd been carrying a weight too heavy for him to bear. "I went to Willowbrook today," I said quietly. Ryan's shoulders sagged. "I know. They called me. I met your sister." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "Lily, I can explain." "She told me everything, Ryan. About her illness, about your parents, about why she's there." I sat down across from him, my anger from yesterday replaced by something deeper and more complicated. "What I don't understand is why you never told me." Ryan buried his face in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed and full of pain I'd never seen before. "Because I was ashamed," he whispered. "Not of Sophia, but of everything else. Of my parents who threw her away like garbage when she got sick. Of the fact that I couldn't take care of her myself. Of the lies I had to tell to make people think I was normal." "Normal?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "Ryan, having a sister with mental illness doesn't make you abnormal. Doesn't it?" His voice cracked. "When we first started dating, you talked about wanting a big family, about how lucky you were to have such loving parents. How was I supposed to tell you that my parents disowned us? That my sister lives in a facility because she sometimes thinks I'm her boyfriend instead of her brother?" The pain in his voice broke my heart. "You could have trusted me." "I wanted to." God, Lily, I wanted to tell you so many times, but the longer I waited, the harder it got. And then we got married, and had Tommy, and I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd leave. That you'd think our kids might inherit Sophia's illness, or that you couldn't handle being part of such a messed-up family. I squeezed his hand tighter. "So you've been carrying this alone for 8 years? I visit her every month. I handle all her medical decisions, her finances, everything. She's my responsibility, and I couldn't abandon her like our parents did." Tears were streaming down his face now. But I also couldn't risk losing you and Tommy. You two are everything to me. The phone call yesterday. She gets confused sometimes. The medication helps, but she still has episodes where reality gets mixed up in her head. She called because she was having a bad day and needed to hear my voice, but in her mind, I wasn't her brother in that moment. I thought about Sophia sitting in that small room, alone except for monthly visits from Ryan. I thought about Ryan carrying this burden by himself, making payments he could barely afford, lying to the person he loved most to protect a secret that was eating him alive. I'm not going anywhere, I said firmly. Ryan, I'm angry that you didn't trust me with this, but I'm not going anywhere. He looked up at me with such hope and disbelief that it made my chest ache. You're not? Sophia is your sister. That makes her family. Our family. I stood up and moved around the table to wrap my arms around him. We're going to figure this out together. All of it. Ryan collapsed against me, his whole body shaking with relief and exhaustion. I'm so sorry, Lily. I'm so sorry I lied to you. We'll work through it, I whispered into his hair. But no more secrets. No more lies. If we're going to do this, we do it together. For the first time in days, I felt like we might actually be okay. 3 months later, I was sitting in Sophia's room at Willowbrook, helping her organize the photos Ryan had brought from our family albums. She held up a picture of Tommy's 6th birthday party, studying his chocolate-covered face with a gentle smile. He looks just like Ryan did at that age, she said. Same messy hair, same troublemaker grin. You should see him when he's really excited about something. He gets this look in his eyes like he's planning world domination. Sophia laughed, a sound that had become more frequent over the past few months. I'd love to meet him someday. When I'm having a good day? We'd been working with Dr. Martinez, Sophia's psychiatrist, to establish healthy boundaries and realistic expectations. Some days Sophia was clear and present, able to understand relationships and family dynamics perfectly. Other days, her illness made everything confusing and frightening. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, Ryan's bringing him by next week, just for a short visit, and Dr. Martinez will be here too. Sophia's eyes lit up, then clouded with worry. What if I get confused? What if I say something that scares him? Then we'll handle it together. That's what families do. The word family still felt new when I applied it to Sophia, but it was getting easier. Ryan and I had spent countless hours in therapy, both together and separately, working through the damage that years of secrets had caused. It wasn't easy, and some days I still felt angry about the lies, but we were building something stronger than what we'd had before. Lily? Sophia's voice was quiet. Thank you for not hating me. Why would I hate you? Because I called Ryan and said those things. Because I made you think he was cheating. Because I'm the reason he had to lie to you for so long. I set down the photo album and turned to face her fully. Sophia, you didn't make Ryan lie to me. That was his choice, and it was the wrong choice, but it wasn't your fault. You were just trying to reach out to the one person who's always been there for you. She nodded, but I could see she was still struggling with guilt. Dr. Martinez said that was normal for people with Sophia's condition. They often blamed themselves for things beyond their control. Besides, I added, if you hadn't made that phone call, I might never have found out about you. And that would have been a real tragedy, because Tommy deserves to know his aunt. The drive home from Willowbrook had become routine, but I still used the time to process my visits with Sophia. Today felt different, though, hopeful in a way that the early visits hadn't been. At home, I found Ryan and Tommy in the backyard, working on a treehouse that had become Ryan's latest project. It was his way of dealing with stress, building things with his hands while his mind worked through complicated emotions. How's Aunt Sophia? Tommy called down from his perch on the ladder. We'd told him about Sophia gradually, explaining that she was sick in a way that made her brain work differently sometimes, but that she was still family, and we loved her. She's good. She's excited to meet you next week. Is she really going to live with us someday? Tommy asked, climbing down from the ladder. Ryan and I exchanged glances. We'd been discussing the possibility of Sophia moving to a group home closer to us, maybe even eventually having her own apartment with support services, but it was still just a possibility, dependent on her progress and what her doctors thought was best. Maybe, Ryan said carefully. But even if she doesn't live with us, she'll always be part of our family. That evening, after Tommy was asleep, Ryan and I sat on our back porch watching the stars come out. It had become our new tradition, this quiet time to check in with each other and make sure we were staying connected. "I never thought I'd say this," Ryan said, taking my hand, "but I'm glad you answered that phone call. Even though it almost destroyed us, it didn't destroy us, it made us stronger." He squeezed my hand, and it brought Sophia back into the light instead of keeping her hidden in the shadows. I leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the certainty that we'd weathered the storm and come out better for it. "No more secrets," I said. "No more secrets," he agreed. And for the first time in months, I believed him completely.